Welcome. So we're moving on to Unit 2 of Real Shanghai Mathematics Practice Book 1.2. So this is the second book in Year 1, and we've just covered Unit 1 material, and now moving on to Unit 2, which is titled as Numbers up to 100. So your child should be familiar with numbers 1 to 20, 0 to 20, and now we're moving on to numbers up to 100. And we begin with counting in tens. So this section is split up into 6 parts, and the first one is counting in tens. Question number 1: count the sticks and write the number down. Write down the number. There are 10 sticks in each bundle. So they're getting children familiar with the concept of tens and to be able to count in tens, which is extremely important, rather than having to go all the way 1, 2, 3 up to 10 and then up to 20. So you should be able to count in tens for it. So they should be able to do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and so on and so forth, up to 100. So the first one is how many tens are there. So there will be 2 tens, and how many ones are there. So you count individual sticks. In this case, there'll be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 2 tens and 8 ones, and this will make 28. And below that you write so that would make 28, and then the bottom will be how you write it in terms of a number sentence, where you'll write 20 plus 8 equals 28, and they're getting you familiar with that. Remember, there are answers available on Colin's website for these books, all of these books. And again, you will need the books to be able to get access to the answers, because there's a password on them, and they password requires you to have the book, as they might say, what's the word on the 7th page, and then depending on the word on the 7th page, question 4, for example, you will then be able to, that would be the password to be able to get you access to the answers. But then once you've got the answers, you can download them and then keep them to double check the answers, and the answers should be gone through once the material has been done, either preferably step by step. So you can keep an eye on if your child is making any serious mistakes which need to be addressed. Question 2: circle the dots, count the numbers, and count them and write the numbers. So again, counting in tens. So circle the number of tens, and then whatever's left over will be the one. So in this case, 4 tens and 1 was 41, and then the other one you can count, and they have tried to split them up slightly, so it makes it a bit easier to put them into tens. But they should be in tens, and then what's left over will be the ones, and they should be fairly straightforward. Question 3: circle the dots in tens, then count them, write the number of dots in the boxes. So again, as before, some of them the circles have been done for you already, some of them haven't been done. So A and B has been done. So in this case, the tens would be 3 tens, and then left over would be 8. So it would be 33 in the tens box and 8 in the ones box, which makes 38. And B again should be straightforward. And C, you will need to count the extra ones, and once you get to a 10, circle them, and then move on to the next one. And once you get to the 10, circle them, and then at the end of them you can count the number of large circles, and that'll be a number of tens, and however many are left will be your ones. And then similar to be done for D as well. And question 4: draw dots to represent the numbers in the boxes. So the first one is done. So again, these are good books, really, that they show you initially how it should be done. So 2 tens, so you draw 10 dots and circle them, and then 10 dots again and then circle them, and then 6 left over. And the same you need to do for the 21. So in this case, there'll be 2 large circles with 10 inside them, and then 1 left over, and so on and so forth. And for the 30, obviously there'll be nothing left over. There'll just be 3 large circles with 10 inside them. Moving on to the next one, which is on page 12, counting to 100. Counting to 100. So 1 10 is 10, 2 tens are 20. So really getting familiar with the tens timetable. Again, you don't need to tell the child that this is a tens timetable, but clearly this is what it is. And it's very important that they be able to count in tens. And so here it goes. So 1 10 is 10, 2 tens are 20, 3 tens are 30, and so on and so forth, where 10 tens are 100. Question 2: look for patterns as you add and subtract, and then getting them familiar with 80 plus 20 is 100, 90 plus 10 is 100, and getting them familiar with 100 as well as takeawaying. So they get familiar with that. So they should be able to do that fairly straightforward. If they're struggling, just focus on A, takeaway 2 for 80, takeaway 20 is 8 take away 2, which is 6, and then the 0 carries on because we're doing tens. So it should be fairly straightforward for them. If they're struggling, just need more practice, but they need to get familiar with adding in tens and looking for patterns which will make it easier for them. 3 look for patterns as you add and subtract. 40 plus 10 is 50, and then so on and so forth, going down. The column methods would be a good way of getting familiar with the patterns. And then 0 plus 100 right at the end is 100. And then question 4, use the 100 square to calculate the following. So these are all 100 squares, so their total is 100, and you can see 80 are in the darker color, and therefore there's only 20 left in the lighter color, and that makes 100. And they shouldn't really need to count. They should be familiar now that each row is a 10. And if they need to count the rows, then maybe, but I don't think they need to do that because they should be familiar with counting in tens and should be more familiar with the number bonds. 75 plus 100, and again, it's visualization. They should be able to see there's another 5 that needs to be a white, and then below that there's 20 more, so 25. And the same principle applies for B as well. And then C, getting familiar with additions up to 100. And then moving on to D, again, fairly straightforward. D is just saying that 100 equals two lots of 50s. Okay, 2 lots of 50s make 100. Again, I'm not too sure how they want to write it. You could put 2 50s, or you could put 2 times 50s, or 2 lots of 50s. As long as they're aware that that's what they're trying to get at. 100 equals how many 25. So each of those colored are in 25, so they can count how many they are. And if they're not convinced of the 25, they can count 25 in each one. So there's 4 25s. And then hundreds, how many 20s there are to make hundreds. And again, it should be straightforward, and how many hundreds tens are needed. So 10 tens make 100. And then moving on to the next one, which is the 3 representing numbers to 100. Question 1, fill in the missing numbers. So tens places, so there's 3 in there, and the ones there's 4 in there, that's 4. And that write as, and then at the bottom we write as 34, and so on and so forth. So for the next one, there's 3, 10, and 0, 1, so that'll be 30, 3, 0, and so on and so forth. And then for number 2, it's the other way around, where you're drawing dots and filling the missing numbers. So 2 dots in the 10 places and 7 ones in the 1 places, and you write that as 27. And again, remember that the 0 will mean that there's nothing in there. So 5 in the tens, 5 circles in the tens places, and there'll be no zeros in the ones, and that will make 50 below it. Question number 3, fill in the missing numbers. 4 tens make, so 4 tens make, so 4 tens means 4 times 10, or 4 tens are 40. 10 tens makes 100, and so on. So for 3 tens, the 7 one makes 37. Should be familiar with that. 2-digit numbers has 5 in the tens place. A 2-digit number just means there are for numbers from 10 all the way to 99 are 2-digit numbers, because you only write 2 digits next. There are 2 digits. Hopefully that makes sense. There are 2 numbers that we write for those ones, whereas below that there'll be single digits, and above that, when you get to 100 more, those are 3-digit numbers. Again, has 5 in the tens place, is 6 and 1, so that should be straightforward. F numbers with the same digit in the tens place and the ones place are and then you write the number. So for example, the first one will be 11, second one will be 22, and so on and so forth. And then how many of those numbers are there in total? And count how many numbers of those there are in total. Yeah, 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99. So there are 9, I believe, but you can double check that. And moving on to question 4, count along the number lines, mark 21, 25, 29, 51, 56, and 59 on there. So it's a very good technique, and to get familiar with that, so your child shouldn't be counting all the way from the beginning. They're already labeled in 10, so for 20, you got 20, and you can see the 5 ones are slightly higher, taller, so you can label that 25. Right in between 40 and 50, and all these tens, the number is slightly lower, indicating the 5s. At 29, again, easier way to go with 30 and then drop 1, and they could do 29 there, or go to 25 and then 4 from there. Either way, as long as they're getting it right quickly, that's fine. And then 51, start from 50 and work your way there. Count along the number line, mark 5. Yeah, so that's question 5. 6, write down the number. So this is the other way around. So A is going to be 5, B, you go to 20, and then another 2 more, so that's 22, and so on and so forth. And for F, again, you can go from 85 onwards, or you can go from 90 backwards. It should be straightforward. Question 7, write the 10 before number and 10 after number. So again, it should be straightforward. This is just indicating the number. At the number, each of these numbers lies between two tens. Well, those two tens. So 35 is between 30 and 40, and 29 is between 20 and 30, and so forth. And if you have something like 90, 90 will be in between which two tens. So this will be between 80 and 100, because it's bang in between the. So hopefully that should be straightforward. So if the 10 less than it, the tens that's less than it, but it's got to be a whole 10. So it's not about taking away 10. It's to find the tens. So all of the answers will be either 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, or 100. 8, fill in the missing numbers. Which is the nearest 10 to the 38? So which is the closest one? And if your child is struggling with that, they need to visualize the number scales. But they should be fairly straightforward. So they think 38, which two tens are the closest to it? One above it, one less than. So the closest are 40 and 30 and 38, which is that closer to 40 or closer to 30? And they should be able to tell that it's closer to 40 fairly straightforward as they're getting more comfortable with numbers, and so on and so forth. At 44, and thankfully they haven't put a digit with a 5 at the end, because that would be bang in the middle, so they haven't put that there. Moving on to the fourth one, which is comparing numbers up to 100. So again, getting you familiar with something that I've mentioned before that is really needed is less than, equal to, or greater than. The child should be very familiar with that. And number 9 is there as again, in case it's needed. If your child needs to look at that, although your child should be fairly familiar with what numbers big and small, and then based upon that, they should be able to do that fairly straightforward. Question 2, order the numbers from greatest to smallest. So it's important about reading it clear. Greatest is the largest number, smallest is the smallest number. So the greatest to the smallest, so A, the greatest number there, then look down and go 58. So they put 58 there, and so on and so forth. If your child needs to just cross out 58 to make sure that they're not repeating, and that's fine. But if they don't need to do that, that's fine as well. So 58, and then it'll be 53, and then 25, then 21, then 17, and then 9 at the end. And similar to for 2B. Question 3, write 16, 6, 70, all these numbers in the correct ovals. So number with the 6 in the one place. So ones, they need to be familiar with the ones place. So the ones place is going to be in the 2 digits. One is going to be the second digit, and in 1 digit, obviously, that will have to be ones anyway. Numbers with 6 in the tens place, again, should be straightforward. Numbers that are greater than 50, numbers that are less than 50. Okay, so getting familiar with the wording and understanding. Question 4, fill in the missing numbers. Something can be written in the box. So what numbers can be written in the box? So the number could have been 1. So you could put 1 comma, because the number could have been 17. Then 2 comma, because the number could have been 27, and so on and so forth. And smallest number that can be written in the box. So in this case, the smallest number that can be written in the box. So the smallest number in this case is which one? So we can write many numbers, but what's the smallest one, which is still bigger than 49? So in this case, it'll be 50 altogether. So the smallest number is 0. 5, talk about the pictures and fill in the missing numbers. There are more tomatoes than, and then which one? Tomatoes are more than which one? So we'll have a look at the quantity. Are there more than the pumpkin? And then we write how that's because 47 is greater than 20, and there are fewer tomatoes. So fewer tomatoes means that the tomatoes are less than. So tomatoes are less than which number? So the watermelon, and so on and so forth. And then moving on to the next one, which is question 5, which is just a practice exercise going through the numbers before. So it should be straightforward. 1A, B, straightforward. C. So getting you familiar with certain terms. Adjacent multiples. Adjacent multiples of the 10 each for each number. So adjacent means next to either side, and multiples of 10 just means 10, 20, 30, 40, etc. So for A, it's going to be 10 and 20. For D, it will be 80 and 90. So getting you familiar with that, write the adjacent numbers. So for D, this isn't important by reading as well. So this is just the adjacent numbers next to it. So this is not about number 10. So for example, C will be, if C is 63, the numbers next to them will be 62 and 64. and so on and so forth. The multiples of 10, so multiple of 10 just means they're in the 10 time table, so 10, 20, 30, 40. That are closest to 27. Okay, so the 27 is between 2, which is between 20 and 30, and this is clearly between 30, and you've got the number line as well to help you with that, and the multiple of 10 closest to 94, which would be 90. Then question 2, find the adjacent numbers by adding or subtracting 1. This is how we get adjacent numbers, by adding or subtracting 1. That means that they're next to each other. So that's just simple calculations to do there. Number 3, count back to a multiple of 10. Okay, so just ask the question, even if that doesn't make sense. It just means that the answers are in the 10 time table. And how do we get that? Well, we get that by simply removing the ones. So 29 take away 9 will give you straight 20. 31 take away 1, and so on and so forth. So getting them familiar with that, which is very important, and then counting forward. Similar principle in terms of getting number bond. So 29 plus 1 will be 30. So reminding them of 9 plus 1 is a number bond, which will take you to then the next multiple of 10, or the closest multiple of 10, which is greater than the actual number, and then take the number up to the next multiple of 10. Again, similar to that, 3 plus 7 equals 10, 95 plus 5 equals 100, and so forth. And then the last one here is about learning about money. So this is an introduction to money, looking at them, and now they should be getting familiar with money in terms of a number of tens. And so this is the introduction here for that. So question 1, look at the pictures. So there's 10, 10, so they should be able to do 10, 20, and write the answer there. And the 5, they should be able to do 5, 10, 15. So they should also be getting familiar with the 5 times table. If they're struggling with that, they should be going to the 5 times table, which is straightforward. And then 50 plus 50 is 100, and 20 plus 5 is 25, and so on and so forth. And your child should be able to add 50 plus 20 plus 5 for 50, 70, 75 plus 2, 77, and so on and so forth. I believe that one there is a £1, so that's 20, 20, 10, 10, 10, 5, and a £1 there. Okay, and exchanging money, you should be able to read from there. So the first one is 5 pence. How many 1 pennies make 5 pence? And then again 5 pence, 1 pence, and how many 2 pence makes 5 pence? In this case, it will be one penny and two pence to make it, or the other way around to do it is 3 1 pence and 2 pence. So getting them familiar with that. 10 pence, 2 pence, and there's a 20 pence there, and a 5 pence. How many of those? And 20 pence and a 10 pence plus 10 pence plus 5 pence. So in this case, there have to be 1 pence and 2 5 pence. 50 with the 5 pence is there, 50 pence and 10 pence, 50 pence and 20 pence and 10 pence. So again, straightforward should be the 50 pence, 2 20s and 10. And it would be useful if you can have coins so your child can see the actual values of the coins themselves and to play with those. I think that's a very good method to see actual practical implications of learning maths. It will mean that they're good with money, and obviously children will love to spend money on things that they enjoy. So it's important that they are good with money and they can see actually what I'm learning has a real implication in day-to-day living and in terms of what I want to do in terms of money, etc. Number 3, look at the price of the picture, write pounds or pence. So this is just getting them familiar with the pounds are more expensive items are generally pounds, and pences are cheaper. So the first one is a book. So book is likely to be £8 rather than 8 pence, and clothes again pounds, and then whether it's ice cream, it would not be £99, it would be pence, and they should just write that in terms of the word mentioned there. Question 4, choose the correct answer. One mathematics, the book costs about, and you can pick the 6 or 60p or £60. So you might think that actually it costs none of those amounts, but which one is more reasonable, or the answer would be so maybe they cost £2 or £3 or even £5. That's closer to 60 pence, so you'd go with B, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have to be exact, but familiar. Although yeah, and again, this is more about the concept. I don't think we need to get too fixated on if there's a dispute and whether they're new items or second-hand items. Dad gave me £10 and Gran gave me £20. So how much will I have? So again, about thinking, as a child struggles with those kind of questions. Think, am I gonna have more if Dad gives me money and Gran gives me money? Am I gonna have more or less? If it's more, then it's addition. Dylan about to exercise is costing. He paid with a £5 note. Dylan received how much in change? So again, getting familiar with change, and if they can, you can pretend that this was happening, and has a £5 note, and buying things for £1 and play with them in that, and then they should be able to work out what's happening. And again, in terms of change, there's a subtraction in there to work it out. Question 5, write less than or equals or greater than in each box. Getting familiar with money, £25. Yeah, it should be straightforward there. Practice questions. Question 6, Laura bought a pen. She paid a £20 note. How much change would she get? So £20 would be 20. Take away how much is the pen? £16 equals 4. So she got £4 in change, and so on and so forth. What could you buy if this is 6C? What could you buy if you had £20? Choose two objects. I would buy such and such a thing. So you have various options. So there are many answers that could be right, but it has to be answer's got to be less than £20. So you can't choose, for example, 15 and £8 one, because that would be more, 16 and 8. So you have to choose that two items. So the answer has to be less than 20 in total, because you're going to get change, and then the change will be 20. Takeaway, take away the items that you bought, and you may need to do another working out in terms of how much the two items would have cost together, and then take away that from £20, and that'll be the total cost. With that, we finish this unit, and we'll move on to the next unit, which is to do with an introduction to time. So thank you for your time. Please do not forget to subscribe and like, and if you can also place any comments and spread the word, that would be much appreciated.